Welcome to True Word Faith for Life with Dr. Shawn, where in-depth biblical teaching meets the richness of original languages and cultural content. Bringing the truth of Scripture to real people for real life every single episode. Thank you for hitting the thumbs up and subscribing. Listen, I want to make an announcement. My buddy Christopher, you've heard of Christopher Bach Ministries. He's a dear friend of mine. Been friends for decades. You know, I'm on his show. It's going to be starting Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time instead of today. Today will be my last day doing the 1 o'clock on Mondays. Good morning, Robert. So good to see you. And so I wanted to tell you about an idea that he had. Most of you don't know my background. I have a weird background, a kinetic background. One which exposed me to things that happen in the world that are shocking. Good morning, Nicole. Things that I think most people just wouldn't be exposed to on a daily basis. And then there's so much noise out there. There are so many news aggregators, so many services that offer the inside scoop. And so I thought, I was frustrated today. I asked Christopher, I said, because he's very good at growing his audience. He's already over 17,000 subscribers. And I was asking God yesterday, why isn't this thing growing? I'm doing what I thought you called me to do, but the episodes aren't getting shared. People aren't subscribing. The channel's not growing, and I need it to grow to sustain itself. It's just that simple. It's expensive. I'm on a fixed income. I'm not going to whine, but I'm a disabled veteran, and this stuff's expensive. I don't know if you know that. And I'm not asking for money. I'm just saying that my hope was that it would grow to sustain itself. But it hasn't. We're 400 or more from having the 1,000 subscribers that's required to begin the whole monetization process. There's a whole big process to that. You have to have a certain number of views within a certain period of days, and you have to have sustained 1,000 subscribers. And obviously the goal is to grow past 1,000, but that's when they start showing your channel to other, they make it more visible. My point in that is that I was talking to Christopher, and Christopher's a master at making things grow. He's a master photographer, literally one of the best in the world. And I was explaining to him that I need this thing to fund itself because, I'm on a fixed income. I can't fund it anymore. And so a lot of people think, well, this is free, but it's not free. Everything that's used to do this and the myriad programs and all that stuff, there's subscriptions and all that stuff. So he had a suggestion this morning that I thought was really powerful, and I hadn't thought of it. What do you all think about the first few minutes of each of my broadcasts, starting Friday, being called the Debrief, in which I break down world events here in the United States and the impact around the world, and the people that impact us all. The world in a geopolitical sense that makes sense, in a way that's plain and trustworthy. So let me know what you think about that idea in comments. Also, send me messages. My smgreener@gmail.com. S as in Shawn, M as in Michael, greener as in the grass is always greener at gmail.com. Send me messages with what you'd like to hear. Topics, things you'd like me to discuss, biblical questions you'd like me to cover. I'd love to do that. I'd love to do that for you. So, because I want to put out things that you need to learn. What I do is I pray, the True Word Faith for Life with Dr. Shawn channel. I pray. Every week I pray and I say, God, what do you want me to do here? How do you want me to proceed? What do you want me to teach about? How do you want me to teach? And I'm trying desperately to do exactly what I hear him telling me to do. So any ideas from you guys, I would really appreciate it. So welcome back to those of you who are rejoining the channel, True Word Faith for Life with Dr. Shawn. And welcome to those, this is your first time. I'm delighted to have you here, whether you're returning, whether you're a subscriber or you're not a subscriber. But if you're not a subscriber, it wouldn't kill you to click on the subscribe, click on the little bell, maybe the thumbs up. And maybe share. If this is a blessing to you, share it. So today we're going to dive deep into another radical teaching of Yeshua, the Beatitudes. Right? We've been talking about that Jesus said what? I would say probably one of my longest or most number of episodes that I've done on this channel so far. Probably the longest, the most number. On the Beatitudes, what they really mean, the Sermon on the Mount. What did it mean? 2,468 words of Yeshua, of Jesus Christ. He said those words. The very first episode, I read those words to you. The words of the Lord. Thanks be to God. 2,468 of them. Most people don't read it all at once. Most people don't hear it all at once. So that's why I wanted to do that. So if you haven't listened to episode 1, I'd encourage you to go back and listen to that. But you can listen to all of the stuff. It's all free. Everything is free on this channel. And if you're listening in any of our podcast locations, audio-only podcast locations, I very, very much encourage you to come over to the True Word Faith for Life with Dr. Shawn YouTube channel. And we have about 600 subscribers. Click on subscribe, click on the little bell, click on the thumbs up. That way you'll get notifications, because that I know of, there's not a way for me to give you notifications when I do a new episode or when I'm going to do a live episode, in case you want to join me live. And then we always post the audio only under the videos tab. The audio only is under the videos tab. The live tab contains all of our live streams. So I'd love for you to be a part of that. Thank you to all who are listening. By the way, if you're listening on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spotify, give us a rating. That would be great. We'd love that too. So these words, these 2,468 words that Yeshua delivered, they were shocking to his original audience. And they remain just as countercultural today. And we're going to explore Matthew 5:8. Yesterday afternoon, I did what it was a very different episode. I don't know if you all, those listening now, if you happen to hear it. By the way, welcome to our Twitch audience too. I don't 100% understand Twitch, but we broadcast live to Twitch, LinkedIn, Instagram, X, Facebook, all those. So I talked about the previous, and I'll be honest, it was a different sort of episode. It was 25 minutes. Most of my episodes are not 25 minutes, but Jesus said what? The, the lucky, hungry, and thirsty. Oh, merciful. I'd encourage you to listen to that one. All of them are chock full, but I'd encourage you to listen to that one. So, what do we do here? In-depth biblical teaching meets the richness of original languages and cultural context, bringing the truth of Scripture to real people for real life every single episode. So thank you for hitting the thumbs up and for subscribing. I appreciate it. It means a lot to me. So I had a professor who profoundly impacted me. His name is Dr. Skip Moen, Arthur J. Moen. And if you Google him, he's a prolific writer. Really, really intense stuff. He's an amazing teacher. I've had amazing teachers at Masters. Dr. Dennis Fry, the founder and president, and also an excellent teacher, and Dr. Ronald Frazier, also an excellent teacher and mentor. And what a blessing. Thank you for joining us on Fire Ministries. I really appreciate it. Yakima, Washington. Awesome. The land of liquid sunshine. What a beautiful place. So, but one of the teachers I had was just so radically different. And there are others. I had many others that were great. But Dr. Moen, Skip, brain breaker. And he wrote this book called The Lucky Life, The Backwards Beatitudes. Now, I had never studied, and this is a lot of years ago, by the way, I had never studied the Hebraic worldview. Dr. Frazier had always been telling me, look, if you want to really understand Scripture, you have to learn the biblical languages. You have to learn the languages. It's absolutely critical. And you know, he was right. He is right. Even into his 80s, he's right. Even a little bit. You might not be a person who, maybe he's a languages person, but I'm telling you, even a little bit at a time, I think is fantastic. So what I wanted to say is this, is that today, blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. When you look at this through the Hebraic lens, and then you read Dr. Moen's book. By the way, some of you have sent me messages, which I appreciate, telling me you've purchased Dr. Moen's book, The Lucky Life, The Backwards Beatitudes. He will love that. This is my book. It just came out, True Word, Faith for Life, with Dr. Shawn Michael Greener. Lulu.com, Lulu.com. And then you just search Dr. Shawn Michael Greener, and that'll take you to it. It'll take a little longer for the book to get to you, but I assure you that will help our ministry. We get a few more dollars per sale of book. If you buy it on Amazon, it will get to you quicker, but we get $1. And that's how Amazon, that's just what they do. And Barnes & Noble and all those, they're just as bad. Amazon's probably the worst, but $1. They give the author $1. And so you're welcome to buy it from there. I just want you to know, just understand that most people don't know. They're shocked when they hear. And this book is textbook quality. This book is made to last a lifetime. It's bound very well. It's a very, very high-end paper, 60-pound paper. And as you can see, there's a lot to it. And we made the print intentionally large, and we made it a little bit far apart. One, so you can take notes. Two, so you can read it. So many books are very, very difficult to read. The paper's cheap. The ink is cheap. And it's so jammed in because it's cheaper to write a book that's smaller, obviously. You wouldn't believe what that book cost to produce, each book. The cost per book is insane. But you will hear me speak about The Lucky Life and Dr. Moen and my professors at Masters, but you'll hear me refer to The Lucky Life, The Backwards Beatitudes. Anyway, I remember sitting in class and just my brain being twisted. And he would just smile and look at the class, and the class would We'd just be shaking we just would, we'd never heard these things before. And he'd say, I know, it's different. It's a challenge to you, right? It's a challenge to you. And I respect that. I respect the challenge that this represents to you. So I'm going to share my insights and his insights and the insight of Scripture, of course. And if you have questions, ask them. I encourage you to ask them. I love answering questions. Those of you who have sent me questions, you can validate that claim. I do love answering questions. So the Hebrew and cultural context of purity of heart, we hear that. And what does that mean? What's that even mean? So in Hebrew, the word for pure is tahor. 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 It means ritually clean, unmixed, uncontaminated. The heart in Hebrew, lev, is not just the seat of emotions as we think in the modern Western world. Right? The heart, this is where our emotions are. Instead, it refers to the core of one's inner being. Their thoughts, their will, our moral compass. For Yeshua's audience, purity wasn't just about an internal state. It was deeply connected to covenantal faithfulness. The Pharisees emphasized external ritual purity, the ceremonial washing, strict dietary laws, and physical cleanliness. But Yeshua was challenging them with an internal standard that went beyond the visible. He wasn't abolishing the Torah's purity laws. He was pointing to the true intent behind them. And I think many of us lose that spot because we throw the word legalism around anytime we hear the word laws. And that's simply, they're apples and aardvarks. They're untethered. A purity of devotion to God, untainted by hypocrisy. Purity of heart, it's about being undivided. Undivided in allegiance. It's not just about avoiding sin. We all think that it's about avoiding sin. It's just about avoiding sin. To be pure is to avoid sin. It's not just about avoiding sin. It's also about having a heart that is wholly devoted to God. This echoes Psalm 24, 3-4. Who may go up to the mountain of Adonai? Who can stand in his holy place? Those with clean hands and pure hearts who don't make vanities of purpose of their lives and swear oaths just to deceive. Yeshua is calling his disciples to a radical, undistracted commitment to the Father. It's not enough to look righteous. It's not enough to wear just the right clothes or have the right haircut, to have a tie, to have a long enough dress or a covering on your head. It's not enough. It's not even about that. It's not enough to look righteous. It's your heart, your motivations, your intentions. They have to align with God's will. What is the reward for that? Aligning with God's will? Seeing God. I know. Look, I understand that for you to hear is a brain breaker. It's hard to hear that. Speaking of hear, how's the sound? On Fire Ministries, if you're still listening, let me know how the sound is. You're elected as our sound tech today. It's an unpaid position. Doesn't even come with a t-shirt. I'm sorry to say. The reward. So Yeshua he's calling his disciples to this radical, undistracted commitment to the Father. Look, we have 1 million. That's my grandson. He's beautiful. We have 1 million. We have 1 million distractions in this world. In the modern world, it seems like that is what it's about. Distractions. But Yeshua is calling his disciples. Now look, you may say, thank you, Nicole, I appreciate it. You may, I don't know, how do I put this? You may think, well, I'm just a person listening to some dude. Me. I'm almost 60 years old. I've lived a crazy, crazy life. I've done a little learning along the way. Hey, Renee. How are you? Welcome from Twitch. I've lived a nutty life. I'm good. I'm saying I'm good to Renee. She asked how I'm doing. If you're listening on playback, that's what that's about. So you may think of yourself, look, I'm just listening. I'm just listening to the word. I go to church and I'm on the outside. I'm out here in the periphery. I'm in the orbit, but I'm out in the periphery. I'm not a person. I'm not a person who, I'm not intense. I'm not, I go and I sit near the back and I wait a little bit to go into the service, the church service. Once the music starts playing, after they do that whole, hey, welcome to visitors things, because I don't, it's not my thing. And, I'm off. I just, maybe you're that person. And then when the final song plays, you're one of those people that just juts right to the door. Out you go. I'm just trying to get out of here. I don't like crowds. Maybe you're that person. I don't know. Maybe you listen to 20 different podcasts a week of people teaching and preaching, and you're on the periphery, and you don't think of yourself as a disciple, but you're a disciple. Yeshua is calling you just like he called them. He's calling you to a radical, undistracted commitment to the Father. And it's not enough to look righteous anymore. It's not enough to sound righteous anymore. It's not enough for people to think you're righteous anymore. It's not enough. My friends, it's not enough to look, sound, or smell the part. Do you understand what I'm saying here? Are you listening? It's not enough to be convincing to the people around you that, by the way, I take these glasses off, can't see a thing. It's crazy. Before my crash, I had 25 eyesight. Insane. Nicole, you have it right. Nicole in chat says faith requires more than there on Sunday, gone on Monday. It's an intentional action to be in the Word daily, seeking His face and learning to have a two-way communication. There, I could end the podcast there. Preach on. That'll preach, Nicole. Thank you. It's this undistracted commitment. Look, you have to have a job, right? Unless you're retired, unless you can't work, if you're disabled like me. Or, you have a money tree, share a seed. You know what I'm saying? Renee, I can read the chats a little bit, but my teachings are kind of intense. So I can look at them some. Renee is asking if I read the chats. It's not enough to look what we consider to be the look, the sound, the words of righteousness. It's not enough. It's radical, undistracted. And you know what? Undistracted, that is the hardest thing for a lot of people, is the lack of distraction. We go, it's just, I don't know. It's so hard. Hey, Martin, how are you, brother? Love you, man. It's not enough to look righteous anymore. I'm not saying you have to become a preacher. I'm not saying you have to become a missionary. I'm not saying you have to even do what I'm doing. Somebody was shocked the other day. They asked me, how much time do you spend? It looks like you spend a lot of time on your messages. And I said, I spend between 40 and 50 hours a week on my messages for the week, if not a little bit more. But Miss Colleen can tell you, this is what I do. I walk podcast puppy, sweet little dog who's taking a nap over there, when I can walk, and I do my therapies, and I go to my medical appointments, and that's what I do. So and we talk about heart, we talk about motivations and intentions aligning with God's will. I'm going to say it again because I don't know. If you miss this, don't miss this. If you miss anything else, don't miss this. What is the reward for aligning with God's will? The reward is seeing God. Seeing God now and in eternity. In the Hebraic mindset, to see God is to experience His presence, His favor, and His revelation. Think of Moses in Exodus, Moshe, which that's his real name. Moses is the name we made up. In Exodus 33, 18 through 23, you might want to write that down, where he asked to see God's glory. Yeshua is saying that those with undivided hearts will perceive, encounter, and walk in God's presence, not only in eternity, but here and now. The hearing now. What he's saying there, Yeshua, what he's saying there to that crowd on the hill, this massive crowd on the hill that's following this radically different rabbi. He's saying to them, and he's saying to you, do you want to see God in your life? Do you want to see God? Do you want to perceive, encounter, and walk in God's presence? Not just in eternity, but here and now. If you want to see that, you have to let your heart, motivations, and intentions align with God's will. If you want to see that, if you want to perceive, encounter, and walk in God's presence, not only in eternity, in here and now, that has to happen. So the question is, what distractions divide your heart? Are you devoted wholly to God? Or do idols of success, comfort, or culture pull you away? I'm not saying that you have to read your Bible all day, every day, the whole day. I'm not saying you have to read True Word Faith for Life with Dr. Shawn Michael Greener all day, every day. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that you pray all day, every day. I'm not saying that at all. I don't want you to think that at all, because that's a life out of balance. But as I teach, and if you go back and you listen to my teachings, all of which are free on the True Word Faith for Life with Dr. Shawn YouTube channel, you will see that what I talk about is in the Hebraic mindset, the Hebraic paradigm, the Hebraic worldview, in Yeshua's paradigm. The relationship with God isn't this fickle little thing. Your relationship with God isn't this, as Nicole in chat said, so beautifully said, popping in, looking for emotion, whipped up emotionalism, as Dr. Dennis Fry of Masters says. It's not looking for that. I'm telling you, I love a good worship song. I love a good hymn. Before I turn this microphone on and turn the camera on, I have worship. Miss Colleen got to experience it yesterday, and I have prayer and communication with God, and I turn what I'm doing over to Him each time. When I study His Word, I turn it over to Him. He makes me responsible for the work. But the responsibility for the work, it falls to me. But what did I just say a few minutes ago? My heart, my motivations, my intentions, they fall to me. And your heart, your motivations, and your intentions fall to you. If you want to see God, they have to align with God. If you want to perceive, encounter, and walk in God's presence in your life, not only in eternity, but here and now, that's what you have to do. But what distractions pull you away? Are you devoted wholly to God? Or do idols of success, comfort, or culture pull you away? Look, I mentioned about the new thing that I'm going to start doing on Friday. The debrief. I'm not sure what I'm going to call it. I have to make sure that that's not something. I think Al Mohler does something like the debrief. So I have to make sure. I have to come up with something that I'm not copying somebody else. But in that, I'm going to clarify, and you don't have to listen to what I have, most of you don't know my background, and that's okay. But I don't say something unless I know it, unless I have either inside information or completely double verified information. Have I ever made a mistake? Absolutely. But listen, I've lived in that world. I worked very closely with the people who are the power brokers. And so when I talk about those things, whatever we call it, some of those things are going to undoubtedly have to do with what the world calls normal. And I'm not saying that you don't get involved as a Christian, you don't get involved in politics. Listen, if you don't get involved in politics as a Christian, I've got a newsflash for you, and I'm sorry to tell you this is true. You have to be involved in politics, because if you are not involved in politics, they will take your faith away. And we saw that happen when Christians about 2 decades and a half ago said, you know what, I'm busy. I'm going to let the politicians handle it. I'm a busy person. I don't have time. And then they worked very hard on taking away our faith and our right to practice our faith unimpeded. This president is bringing that back. Thanks be to God. It's very difficult for culture not to distract us, right? Look, I'm trying to rearrange this. I'm very limited physically. So I'm trying to rearrange. I'm donating hundreds of books to the VA, my local VA. They have a book thing that they have a library, and I asked them. I said, "Hey, am I allowed to donate religious books?" And they're like, "Yeah, we love those." So what happens is you donate them to the library, and then a veteran comes along that's there for treatment. Either they're going to read it during treatment, or not during treatment, but while they're waiting for treatment, or they take it home. They're allowed to take it home, and they can bring it back if they want. They don't have to. And I have all these books. I have thousands of books. My daughter's going to inherit most of them, but many of them, they're interesting books. They're things that she wouldn't be interested in, and I'm going to donate them. I'm excited about it. I found out about it, but I got to box these books up. That's difficult for me to do. But I look around this room, and I can remember how many times I've been distracted. I'm working, okay, I'm focused on, okay, going to this, and this, I'm doing this, accomplish this area, boom, 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 and then something distracts me. Distractions are all over the place. And look, some of them are not bad. My little puppy, he loves WALKs. It's his favorite thing in the world, next to Nana. And if Nana takes him for a WALK, that's utter bliss. I take him for a WALK. I have to spell it because if he hears me say it, that's it. Podcast over. Hey, Dustin, good to see you, brother. Distractions. Sometimes they happen. Sometimes they are, illness. I'm, terribly ill. I've been terribly injured. And unfortunately, illness has come with that. And it's going to take me to my end. And sometimes that's a distraction. Pain is a distraction. But there are some distractions that divide our heart, and maybe pain is one of them. There are many people who, when they experience pain, they say, I'm done with God. If he would allow me to be in pain, what kind of God do I want if he allows me to be in this pain? Distractions. I try. That's why I asked about the lighting. By the way, Roger, if you're listening on playback, I made it a little bit brighter today. I'm experimenting a little bit with the lighting. I bought some lights and I'm trying to figure out, because that can be a distraction to people focusing. People say, well, your ugly face, that's a distraction. Your ever expanding forehead, that's a distraction. That distracts me. But then the light. I wrote a book, Excellence Killed the Church, How Mediocrity is Destroying America, many years ago in 2012. And in that, I did an in-depth study on what distracts people. And in the workplace, you'd be interested to know, maybe you wouldn't be, but women are distracted by very different things than men. For women, temperature, too cold or too hot, they get distracted. They can't, look, don't argue with me. It's the years of study. And an immense industrial psychological study, several of them actually. And I bought those studies to the research so that I could apply that to my book. Then for men, lighting. In the podcast or the music world, sound. It's a distraction. If it's bad sound, it's not loud enough, it's too loud, whatever the case may be, it's a distraction. But in everyday life, there are many distractions. You say, well, I don't think of children as a distraction, but children can be. I subscribe to the theory that children need to see that when it is time for quiet time, mom and dad, or mom and dad together, if they're studying the word, then that needs to be, hey, listen, this is an important time. Obviously, give them something to do. Maybe plan it for when they're napping. Parenting tips from Dr. Shawn. Maybe it's idols of success. If I get that boat, I live water's right there. If I get the boat, I don't want a boat, by the way. I love being on boats. Many of my friends have boats, and they're so kind to take me out on when I'm able to do it. But, if I get that boat. Also, people say, if I get that Toyota Tundra or that, GMC High Sierra or whatever, if I get that thing, maybe it's the job. If I just get this job, then I can focus. Maybe it's a comfort thing. I don't know. Maybe it's a cultural thing. I don't know what it is that pulls us away, but there are distractions that divide your heart. And he says, I want you to be wholly devoted to me. If you want to see me, if you want to experience me, if you want to perceive me, if you want to hear from me, your attention and your devotion cannot be divided. You say, okay, great, Dr. Shawn. I feel terrible now. Well, here's some practical steps. Engage in self-examination. Do a relentless self-examination where you look at you and you go, hey, you know what? This is reality. Don't lie to yourself. Be real. Engage in deep self-examination. Spend time in prayer, asking, Lord, is my heart undivided before you? And then listen. He'll tell you. He'll tell you. The next one's hard. I'm not going to lie. I've told you many times, and I've preached all around the country to churches, gigantic churches, bigger than the town I grew up in. And some as small as 25 people. And in speaking to all of those groups, I've learned one thing that's absolutely true. People are terrified of the conversation about living purely because they equate purely to perfection. They say, I can't live pure. I can't be perfect. Why try? Walk in integrity, not just outwardly, but inwardly. Gain control over your thought life. Gain control over your intentions and your motives. Listen, they have to reflect a pursuit of God alone. Do your friends even know? Do your neighbors even know that you're a believer? Do your workmates even know that you're a believer? That you're a follower of the way? Have they any idea? And if they don't, why don't they? Well, I keep my faith private. Why? We're not called to keep our faith private. That's the world telling you. That's the world lying to you. That's the woke world saying you can't talk about faith in your work. Now you have to work. You go to work. A Christian, a follower of the way, should be a Messianic, a Jew. Generally, religious Jews are the best employees ever. But if you're a person of faith, if you have that bumper sticker, follow me on Sunday it's 10 o'clock to so-and-so church, or follow me to True Word Faith for Life with Dr. Shawn. Friends, if you have that and you say that and you do that, you had better constantly be working hard you have to have engaged and engage in deep self-examination, asking the Lord, is my heart undivided before you? And you have to live purely, walking in. That's why some people, many people, I think almost all people, don't tell friends, don't tell workmates, don't tell people, their neighbors, that they're believers. It's not because they want to keep it private. It's because they don't want to be challenged. Because the neighbors see Jesus in you or they don't. And if we're not walking in integrity, if we don't keep our word, not just outwardly, but inwardly, if we don't manage our thought life, our intentions, our motives, our hurts, habits, and hang-ups, if we don't do that, if we don't reflect a pursuit of God alone, they will never see Jesus in us. They will never want to be faith-driven people. They will never want to be followers of the way. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Blessed are the peacemakers. Hang with me. It's not a long teaching. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. You say, well, you're a dude that, multiple disciplinary black belts. You've been in conflicts and been in the military and police officer and post-military activity. It used to teach people how to defend themselves and in life or death situations. That doesn't sound very peaceable. It doesn't sound very peaceable. Different thing. Listen closely. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Listen, the Hebraic concept of peace, shalom, it's so different than we English even understand. In English, peace is often understood as the absence of conflict. But in Hebrew, shalom is much deeper. It means wholeness. I wish you could see shalom in Hebrew, actual Hebrew, written out. It's beautiful. It means wholeness. It means restoration. It means reconciliation. It means completeness. Shalom is so much deeper. Wholeness, restoration, reconciliation, and completeness. The absence of chaos. A peacemaker then isn't simply one who avoids conflict, but one who actively seeks to bring restoration and right relationships. For the Jewish audience there on the hill, listening to Yeshua, peace wasn't a passive thing. It was a dynamic, active process of bringing God's kingdom order to the world. And friends, the kingdom order, it was so different. That included social justice. And I don't mean social justice has been defined by the woke DEI crowd. Totally different. Totally different. Care for the marginalized. And reconciliation between people and God. A peacemaker, oseh shalom. Oseh shalom. That's a peacemaker, oseh shalom. It's somebody who's engaged in the divine mission of restoring brokenness. And this aligns with Isaiah 9:6, which calls the Messiah the Prince of Peace, Sar Shalom. I had never heard it put this way until Dr. Moen was lecturing one day, and I'm on the front row because my wife says I'm a suck up, but it's because I want to hear everything. I want to catch everything. I want to catch every nuance. I was so honored to be able to be taught by such incredible professors that I said, no, how often am I going to be 3 feet away from one of the greatest teachers of all time? Because Masters brought him in and he became a pivotal role there. And here I am. And we ended up becoming friends. And he ended up staying at my house and doing different events together and all that. Sar Shalom. Sar Shalom. Prince of Peace. Yeshua's followers are to carry on this mission by bringing healing, justice, and truth into a fractured world. When I do this, whatever we're going to call it, in the first few minutes of our messages in every broadcast, where we talk about geopolitical events and events here, what they mean, what different world events, I'll pick a few and we'll unpack them, what they really mean. When I do that, you're going to see the world, as if you don't know this already, it's a very fractured world, but it's in many cases it's fractured because of misinformation, disinformation. When we know the truth truly does set us free if we act upon it. And that means we have to bring healing. We have to bring justice. Sometimes justice calls for accountability. Justice calls for consequences. The world is fractured because of a lack of truth. For they shall be called sons of God. Do you know what that means? It's an Hebraic title of honor. Being called a son of God meant being identified with the character of the Father. There's no greater thing. In the Hebrew Scriptures, sons of God, it referred to divine beings or those given a special mission from God. When Yeshua says that peacemakers will be called sons of God, he means they're actively living out the Father's will on earth, just as Yeshua did. Man, do you want to be called a son or a daughter of God? Are you a peacemaker or are you a peacekeeper? A peacekeeper avoids conflict. A peacemaker confronts it, resolves it with truth and love, truth and love, truth and love. Resolves it with truth and love. Peacemaker versus peacekeeper. Some of you folks, listen, I've said this before. This darn cable. I've said this before. Your yes means nothing until your no means something. Your yes means nothing until your no means something. If you say yes to everything, because you're a peacekeeper. I'm just trying to keep the peace. That's all. I'm trying to keep the peace. We used to call my mom, she was the diplomat, just trying to keep the peace. I lived in a volatile household. My mom just tried to keep the peace. Peacekeeper is not a peacemaker. Apples and aardvarks. The peacekeeper just tries to avoid it. Peacemaker confronts the issue and resolves it with truth and love. Where can you bring reconciliation? Is there a broken relationship that God is calling to your mind right now? Is there a broken relationship that God's calling you to mend? Don't be quick to go past that, right? You say, well, I don't want to mend it. If I'm being honest, I don't want to mend it. I'm tired of mending. I don't want to mend it. I'm sick of being the mender. You can't fix everything. You can't. I'm sorry to tell you, you can't fix everything. But you can engage with truth and love. I talk about this from, as many of you know, I had a counseling practice. Some of my degrees are in counseling, and one would argue the masters and the two doctorates, one of the masters and two of the doctorates are in theology. And so one would argue that to some degree that has to do with counseling, but I actually was a certified counselor and all that. And in much of my counseling, I helped teach people. They would say, this person in my family is an alcoholic, and they come, or a drug addict, and they're just angry, and they're disruptive and hurtful, and they come to our family gatherings, and they just disrupt them every time. It makes it not worth having. And I would explain, well, why do you invite them? Well, they're family. Have a conversation with them. Just have a conversation with them and say, you know what? I just got to tell you, these family events, we want these to be peaceful. We just want them to be peaceful. And when we want them to be, we don't want alcohol or drugs to impact that. We don't want anger or hatefulness to impact that. And to be honest, you are those things. You've been those things. We want you here. We want to love you and be loved by you. But we can't have it if you're going to drink anything or be intoxicated in any way, or you're going to spew anger or hatred. We can't have it. And if you can't agree to that, if you can't adhere to that, then we simply can't invite you. Wait a second, I'm family. What do you think, you're better than me? Who do you people think you are, right? And then it becomes this thing. I get it, folks. I get it. That's easier said than done. Lots of people have looked at me in the eye and gone, are you kidding me? That's never going to happen. I get it. Sometimes you have to do that. Maybe you could comment in comments if you're listening on playback or you're listening live, if you've had to be that person. Or maybe you're in a situation where that's happening. Maybe you're that person that someone needs to have a conversation with you. If you're that person, you will not show others the love of Christ until you change. How can you be an ambassador of Shalom? Look at your community. Look for ways that you can engage in true justice, not social justice in the sense of the woke DEI world, but I'm talking about justice. Somebody that's been unjustly accused or unjustly maligned, canceled. Stand with them. Be brave enough to stand with them. And how about mercy? Sometimes people just need a little bit of mercy. I talk about that in yesterday's episode. I talk about how, have you ever been in a situation where you see someone who clearly and obviously is in need, but in your mind you go, they're probably just a drunk. They probably put themselves there. They probably waste whatever help I'd offer them, but you don't even offer them. You don't even offer them a smile. You're supposed to be the love of Christ. Not even a word of kindness. Hey, do you need anything? Can I help you? How can I help you? Is there anything I can do for you? Nothing. Look for ways to engage in your household, in your neighborhood, in your community. I so appreciate you tuning in today to the True Word Faith for Life with Dr. Shawn, teaching the Bible as I believe it was meant to be taught, as it was meant to be understood, for a life that truly matters. Join us Friday at 6:30. I do now. 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for more life-changing truth. If you would, if you're not a subscriber, please click on subscribe. It costs you nothing. Click on the little bell and for all notifications and click on the thumbs up and maybe share it with somebody. It doesn't cost you to do that. It doesn't cost you, but it could be priceless to someone else. Stay connected for our next episode on Friday at 6:30. Until then, may you walk in the purity of heart and the fullness of God's shalom. Shalom, shalom. Shalom alaikum.